LaxFactor Podcast. What is up, college lacrosse fans? This is the 57th episode of the LaxFactor Podcast, and today we're going to talk about way too early dark horses in college lacrosse that could make noise in 2020. That is the official title. Before I get into all of it, I want you to make sure to hit that like button down there, subscribe to the channel, share the video if you like what we're doing, and if you want to support us more, go to LaxFactor.com. You can get some swag, or you could just watch our videos and do all of the interacting with us through the website. So let's get into it. And first, the first team that I want to talk about is Ohio State, the Ohio State Buckeyes. Last year, 8-4. They don't get an at-large with an 8-4 record. Some people were mad about that. We'll get into why you can't be mad about that. But as with previous seasons, they started the season 7-0 on fire. I think not in 2018, but 2017, I think they started 9-0 and on fire. And they start 7-0 before they finally get beat. This is my gripe with Ohio State, is they always do pretty well in their out-of-conference schedule, and then they get into their conference schedule. And granted, the big conference, Big Ten, is tough, but they get beat by Rutgers in their first conference game 14-6 after going 7-0. And they got beat up by Rutgers. And that kind of gave everybody that was all the detractors like, hey, yep, see, we were right. You know, you don't believe the hype with Ohio State at 7-0. They're not that good. They follow that loss up with a 13-8 loss to Penn State. That's not that bad. I mean, that's kind of a bounce back game to a degree. 13-8 is respectable against Penn State, at least at that point it had been. Then they beat Hopkins on April 14th. They beat Hopkins by a goal as they're progressing here. And 8-2, they beat a huge in-conference rival by a goal on April 14th, 8-2. Things are looking pretty damn good for the Ohio State Buckeyes. A loss to Maryland 6 days later by only a goal. So, I mean, they beat Hopkins. They only lose to Maryland, who's tough, by a goal. And you're still not looking bad at 8-3 with Michigan coming up to finish the season. So Ohio State, all they got to do, it's pretty simple. Beat Michigan and you get in, because at that point, Rutgers was probably going to lose their final game of the year if they hadn't already. So for Ohio State to get into their conference tournament, and they would have been the 4 seed, they just had to beat Michigan on the road. And Michigan at that point was sitting, I believe, at 3-9. Now, Michigan was a solid team. Michigan was, I think I had said last year in one of our shows, Michigan was one of the best bad teams that I had seen. They played a lot of tough lacrosse. They lost a lot. They competed in a lot of close games and just had a lot of close losses. So Ohio State win, you get into your conference tournament, then you have a legitimate shot at maybe getting a win, even losing in the finals and getting an at-large bid. They did not do that. They lose to Michigan on the road, 13-10. Season's over. It's done. Rutgers gets the 4 seed in the Big Ten tournament. Ohio State goes home, and they are done, son. But that's how close Ohio State was to keeping their hopes alive in 2019. They were 8-3 with a 3-9 team in their way of making the postseason, and they lost. Now, why you say why? Why would you put them up at dark horse status in 2020? I'm glad you asked. Trey LeClaire, senior attackman. I think he plays a little mid. I played mid too. I watched a bunch of Ohio State games, but early in the season the quality was poor, and then later in the season there's just too much going on. But anyway, LeClaire is back for his senior campaign, 34 goals, 3 helpers, 37 points, and Ohio State needs LeClaire to be freshman Trey LeClaire. His freshman year, he puts up 60-plus points, and he hasn't gotten outside the 30s. His sophomore and junior years, he's been right around that 37 point. So Ohio State needs him to put up more than 37 points. Trey LeClaire, you need to get 45 plus for Ohio State to have a chance, because the 3 teams that are ahead of you in the Big Ten are all brutal. And there's a couple of teams right below you in the Big Ten that are brutal as well. Jackson Reed Jr., he's back, 29-8. Jack Myers had a great freshman year, 17-20. He's back. They lose Jack Jasinski, and it seemed that Jack Jasinski was at Ohio State for like 9 years. I'm pretty sure he was. I'm almost sure that's a fact. Jack Jasinski was at Ohio State for 9 years, and he just completed his eligibility last year. They lose his 32 points. And they returned, but offensively, and this is the big thing, and this is going deep down into their roster, but they bring back 12 of their top 13 leading scorers. Now that counts guys that put up 4 and 6 points or whatever last year as well in that, but still they bring back 12 of their 13 top point getters. They bring back 3 37-point getters, an 18-point getter in Kobe Smith, and a 13-point getter in Lucas Buckley. Very formidable offensive team Ohio State is. Back on the defensive side, Jeff Henrick, along with Salisbury Riss, both guys that have experience. Faceoff specialist Justin Inacio, he's back. He won 36.7% of his faceoffs. That surprised me. Like I said, I watched a lot of their games. I did not know he made that much noise. Josh Kursan is back in cage. He was at 50% last year, and as I always say, at the Division I level, find a goalie that can save the ball at a 50% click, you're pleased. Find one that can save it at a 55% click, you are delighted. You get a kid that's 60 plus, you find yourself an All-American, and everyone's going to be happy. So Ohio State, one bad loss away from making the Big Ten tournament, and they played every other team that made the tournament tough. 1 goal loss to Maryland, 1 goal win over Hop, respectable outing against PSU. If the unproven guys on defense for Ohio State can come out and play solid, they don't have to play great. They just have to play solid lacrosse. Through 2020, they could make noise for sure. That's why I put them as one of my dark horse teams. What will be tough, though, they have to unseat either Maryland or Hopkins as the second or third team in the Big to guarantee themselves an NCAA tournament berth. I assume most of us think PSU is going to win the Big Ten, probably win the Big Ten tournament. But then it's between Maryland and Hopkins from there. So I think for Ohio State to guarantee themselves a spot in the NCAA tournament, I think they have to finish third in the Big Ten, technically. Finish third in the regular season and then, put up a good showing in the semis, even if you lose. And even then you may want to lose to PSU. I don't know. But the kicker being, I think if they finish third in the Big Ten, I think they get an at-large bid in the tournament. If they finish fourth, they still could, depending on how everything goes. The Big Ten could put in 4 teams. It's just a matter of how that all pans out in the regular season. Do they split? Does a team go 4-0 and another one goes 3-1? There's more teams than that in the Big Ten, but you know what I mean. So Ohio State, they got a shot. They just have to play well on defense, a little bit better than we expect them to. They may make the tournament. And if they do make the tournament, they're very formidable offensively. They should be solid defensively, and that's really what you're looking for come tournament time. An offense that can put up goals and a defense that can stop teams. And they have a solid faceoff guy to boot, so looking good for Ohio State. Okay, so my second dark horse team here, High Point out of the Southern Conference. In 2019, they go 13-3. They have a loss to Richmond in the Southern Conference tournament finals that cost them an NCAA tournament berth. There was no way the committee was going to let them in with their strength of schedule. 2019 highlights, and this is why some people thought they got gypped. 13-9 win over Duke at Duke. 14-13 win over UVA at UVA. So holy crap, their non-conference wins over 2 of the biggest, best teams in the country. Eventual national champion, both Final Four teams. Followed the UVA win up though. They beat UVA on the road, and then they followed that up with a 10-9 loss to St. John's. And then they also lost to Jacksonville by 2. So those losses, if they win those 2 games, they go 15-1. They lose to Richmond in their conference finals. At-large bid, hands down, no question. So you could say those 2 losses cost them an at-large bid. Probably not. Those 2 losses didn't. What really cost them the at-large bid was not handling their business against Richmond. So that sucked. And what they lose is huge. What they lose is Tim Troutner Jr., the goalkeeper, PLL Rookie of the Year, had a great season, both at High Point his senior year, and then goes right on, plays PLL ball, tears it up. So they lose him, 54.1% save percentage, despite playing a very tough schedule. And I hate to say this because it's not true, but it is. They could actually be better defensively next year without Troutner, because as long as they can find a goalkeeper to save the ball at a 50% clip, as I always say, they have Chris Price coming back, 19 caused turnovers, 26 GBs. Clayton Kroll, 16 caused turnovers, 36 GBs. Nick Walsh, 15 caused turnovers, 29 GBs. Luke Capetto, 7 caused turnovers, 14 GBs. A lot of stats, but they bring back 4 polls, all upperclassmen, all with legitimate starting experience, playing a fairly tough schedule, all on the roster that beat Duke, that beat Virginia. So they bring back a tough, experienced core for their defense. So if you're ever going to start a new goalie and you have to replace a really tough, nasty goalie, this would be the type of year to do it when you have a crazy defense coming back. On offense, Asher Nolting, one of the best, most exciting attackmen to watch in college lacrosse, hands down. He was 44 goals, 47 helpers last year, a 50-50 guy, 91 points. He turns the ball over a lot, high risk, high reward, and it's going to result in a lot of turnovers. I want to say he had 70 plus turnovers last year, but he'll shore that up a little bit, just being a year smarter as a junior this year instead of a sophomore. And either way, that's part of their offensive scheme. Ben Baker back 27-6. Dalton Silver 21-9. Kobe Russell 15-11. Hunter Vines 18-5. A lot of talented guys come back on the offensive side, anchored by Asher Nolting, one of the best to play the game right now. They lose Chris Young. That hurts. 44-9 last year, 44 goals. Great natural goal scorer. Played really well with Nolting. Sorry, guys, for those listening, again, if I haven't already said it, I'm drinking beer and pre-gaming for the Giants game here today against Arizona. But like Ohio State, they were pretty much just one loss away from getting in. If they had maybe only dropped one of those two games between Jacksonville and St. John's, maybe that puts them in consideration for an at-large. But the bottom line is they had a chance to win and get in, which that's a playoff game, yo. You have your conference finals game, and you win and you get in. You lose and you don't get into the big dance. That's your chance, and they blew it. But in 2020, with a bunch of very talented returners on offense coming back, all of their starters pretty much coming back on defense except for their huge goalkeeper, Troutner Jr., they've got, and then to boot, they got to probably pull off a little bit more magic and get an upset, get a non-conference win that matters also, and then just handle your business and win your conference tournament, which they're completely capable of. I think they're my favorite to win the Southern Conference, so automatically they're one of my favorites to make the NCAA tournament. But that's why I think they're one of my dark horses. I think that if they could get into the tournament, the NCAA tournament, they can get themselves a win as an unseeded team or as one of the teams that gets in through their automatic qualifier. So High Point, watch out for them. Other teams worth noting. They're worth noting, but I don't think these two count as dark horses. So I'm going to mention them both. Teams that I think that didn't get into the tournament last year that could this year is Denver. They're not a dark horse to me, though. Otherwise, I'd give a full profile of them, but they're not a dark horse because with a coach like Tierney, they've won a national championship, but they're always scary, and you've got Walker back on attack. You've got an experienced team overall coming back. They played well against Syracuse in the fall. I saw them. So Denver, they're worth noting, albeit I don't consider them a dark horse per se. You have North Carolina. Again, they've won a national championship recently. They play in the ACC. Not necessarily a dark horse, but they pick up Chris Gray, and they already had a very talented team around, coming in, a bunch of youngsters playing. That's why they were, bottom of the ACC last year. So North Carolina, another team that's worth mentioning. Now, here's the why nots, because I know there's a lot of teams that had really good seasons last year, and their fan bases and others are probably hoping they repeat and do the same this year. So here's my why nots. Like, hey, what about Princeton? What about Princeton? They bring back Michael Sowers, key, one of the best attackmen to play the game. He will go down as one of the greatest attackmen all time. Probably if I were to put a list together of top 30 or 40 attackmen all time, Michael Sowers is on that list. He's easily one of the top 5 attackmen in the country this year, if not one of the best 3 attackmen in the country this year. So even with that guy, why do I not have them as a dark horse? They had some key losses in all thirds of the field. They lost some guys offensively, defensively, and they've struggled defensively on top of it. But mostly it's because the Ivy is brutal. The Ivy is, the race there at the top is Cornell, Penn, and Yale. And who's going to, they'd have to unseat one of those teams to even have a shot at getting into the NCAA tournament. We saw last year only the winner in the at-large, and that was it. Cornell got left out. So Princeton, that's why I don't have them as one of my dark horse teams, even though they're formidable. Rutgers. Why not Rutgers? They had a solid year. They finished strong last year. They make the Big Ten tournament. They had a couple of upsets. Why not them? Well, it's because, especially because they bring almost everybody back on offense, everybody that really, really matters. But they also lose McKaylee and Pless off their defense. 2 of their very key defenders. They lose them off the defensive side. They're not built to overcome that. So I think that they probably finish about the same this coming up year as they did last year. Army. Once again, a team that returns almost everybody that matters offensively, but you lose Johnny Surdick and Schultz, Johnny Surdick specifically on the defensive end, and then you lose Schultz also. Between the two of them, that's 46 caused turnovers. Surdick had 36, Schultz 10. So, and then you lose AJ Barreto in cage, a 57% save percentage last year for Barreto. So you lose your goalkeeper, who's a monster. And then you lose Surdick, who is a monster. You lose Schultz, who is key. Army, even with bringing everybody back offensively, they're built a little bit more, I think, to weather that kind of loss on the defensive side, just because of the discipline they play with. But that's why I didn't have Army as one of them. Richmond is another one. Richmond's easy. You lose Teddy Hatfield, and you're not replacing him. You can't lose a 50-50 guy like Hatfield. He's hard to replace, not to mention Ryan Lee at the midfielder. I think Ryan Lee actually played attack, 17 goals and 11 assists, and Hatfield's 36 and 35. You lose those guys, 2 of their top 4 scorers. I don't see them being a dark horse. UMass, another one for the same reason. They bring back a trio of really nice offensive lacrosse players. Chris Conley, 27 and 36, Prosick, 35 and 5, and Spencer, 21 and 12. But they lose their best defender and an incredible goalie in Scanone. And Scanone, for some reason in my notes it says Scanone's ass. I don't know why it says that. So that's why not UMass. So all in all, my Ohio State, I think that they can make some noise. They're solid every other year, every 2 years, every 3 years they're solid. I believe that High Point could have a similar season to last year. I don't think that expecting High Point to win 12 games. They won 13, I think, last year, 13 and 3. I think that they, assuming they play about the same number of games, I think that they could go 12 and 4 next year, but win their tournament and get themselves in. And then, like I said, we got Denver, UNC, Princeton, Rutgers, Army, all the guys I talked about, all very good teams, and any one of them could prove me wrong or whatnot. That's it. Nothing. I'm gonna sit here and I'm gonna cheers to kind of now doing my way too early prediction, or my way too early top 10 and now my way too early dark horse teams. I think that what we're going to do is we're going to set up a dual podcast here with the guy who runs the lacrosse analytics channel. And we're going to talk about we were both going to put a full top 20 together and talk about that a little bit. So see a little bit more collaboration. We had the PCARC interview. I'm going to start, trying to find a few more people to interview here and there, even though interviewing isn't my thing. Rambling on like a lunatic is more my thing. And I think that's what works for me. So either way, thank you for listening. Be sure to like, subscribe, hit the notification bell, share the podcast. Go to LaxFactor.com. You can buy yourself some swag. Comment down below to be entered in to win these shorts. We'll do the drawing a week from the day that you're seeing this podcast, assuming you're watching it on Tuesday. And that is it. Hoost is out.